The headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Evan Millward. We have a lot for you today, from helping families cope with Alzheimer's to the resurrection of a theater in Cincinnati. But we start with the city of Covington. 2020 was a terrible year on so many levels, but Covington managed to keep its economy climbing. To get the story behind that, I spoke this week with the city's Director of Economic Development, Tom West. Tom, I think a lot of people look at these numbers, and you're looking at more than 2,100 jobs, $85.5 million in capital investment in 2020, which was the year that is arguably the hardest year that many of us have seen on so many levels. People see those numbers and are going to be very surprised, I think. So what's working?
Well, to understand those numbers, you also have to understand that a lot of work had been done for a number of years to get us to the point on some of those larger projects. So there were things in the pipeline. I also want to make very, very clear that while we're very excited about the amount of investment and the number of new jobs, we are very, very sensitive to the fact that the restaurant and hospitality industries were hit very, very hard, and they did not enjoy the same type of economic prosperity. And we tried to do some things to address that, and we talked about that in the report as well. But to get back to your question, I think Covington is a great story to tell because of our authenticity. We have authentic historic districts that are not all completely polished and 100% restored. There's a little bit of that grit and edge that I think talent is seeking, and of course companies are seeking talent. I think the other story is that we have an incredible team with the city of Covington, and that's not just the economic development department, that's all the departments: neighborhood services, public works, police, fire, legal, finance, and not to mention our elected leaders. All are rowing the boat in the same direction, if you will. And it takes that kind of cohesion and that type of a family, really, in order to produce results like this during a pandemic.
Well, I think you touched on something there that's really interesting, because we hear this often in the city of Cincinnati about the number of jobs and the amount of capital investment's great, but like, I need a sidewalk in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so I guess talk to a little bit about sort of residential services in that regard. And look, I know there's money coming from the federal government here to the tune of millions of dollars that you guys are probably starting to piece together and go, well, what can and should we do with this? So, for someone who doesn't live maybe in Mainstrasse or near the Madison corridor or even in Latonia, where there are these big projects happening, what should they notice?
Well, one of the things that's very different about Covington and basically all communities in Kentucky that's very different from Cincinnati and Ohio is that we don't have local sales tax. So if we're going to spend city dollars to, as you said, put in a new sidewalk in a neighborhood, or do other neighborhood projects, whether they're flower pots or street paving and that kind of thing, that funding has to come from payroll taxes. So it's very important. The jobs numbers are incredibly important to us in Covington. But we're also, I think, with it enough to understand that we can't produce those job numbers unless we have those types of retail businesses, whether it's Rich's proper with their restaurant and bar there at 7th and Madison, or Braxton Brewery, or other restaurants. You got the Cock and Bull and Lissa in Mainstrasse. If it's not for those, we're not attracting the talent. And again, the jobs follow the talent these days versus how it used to be. So we're very attuned to the fact that it's quality of life and quality of place that matter.
There are, for everything that is working so well, even through a pandemic, you mentioned you guys had to lay a foundation. There are some things, I guess, that are maybe not the sexy things that they're not the big development projects, but you have to lay a foundation for that. What what have you guys focused on or streamlined or changed that has sort of primed the pump here?
Well, by trade, I'm a planner. And so a lot of folks don't get really excited about zoning. In fact, we've kind of eliminated the Z word from our zoning code. But we spent the last year and a half prior to the pandemic completely rewriting the city's zoning code. And our objectives there were to make Covington, the part we love about Covington, legal. Because in the past, they had put an old-fashioned suburban zoning code on a historic district that, that zoning code wasn't old-fashioned enough. And so we've made what the historic stuff illegal. So we've now legalized all of that, and we call it the Neighborhood Development Code. That actually got adopted and implemented during the pandemic. And we're already getting rave reviews from private homeowners, developers, other investors that are seeing this. We got rid of having two regulatory boards and combined them into one. So now instead of spending 3 months ping-ponging between an urban design review board and a zoning board, you go to one board meeting on one night, and that same group makes all the decisions for you. And you walk out of that night, hopefully, with your permit, rather than spending an extra 3 months trying to figure out what we want you to do.
Excellent. Tom, we've got about 30 seconds left. So I've got to ask you this. We all, no one exists in a vacuum in our region here. So would you say that Covington's success and momentum is indicative of something broader happening across sort of the tri-state area?
Yeah, obviously we're in the leadership position on this. I have to brag a little bit, but no, absolutely. I think Greater Cincinnati is in an incredible position right now. A lot of it is location, but more than that, I think it's the people of this region, the diversity and the sense of community that stretches across 3 state lines and 7 or 8 counties and God knows how many municipalities.
All right. Yeah. And look, 2020 was a good year. 2021, a lot on the agenda, the IRS site, Riverfront Commons, so much more. Tom West of the city of Covington, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Evan.
Welcome back to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Craig McKee. Tens of thousands of families in our area have a loved one with some form of dementia. The Alzheimer's Association says most of those with dementia will wander away at some point. And if they aren't found in 24 hours, they say the outcome is usually tragic. And that is what happened recently to Deborah Riley of Middletown. With that in mind, I spoke with Program Director of the Greater Cincinnati Alzheimer's Association, Melissa Deaver, about what families can do. When it comes to wandering, in light of this most recent tragedy, those who have Alzheimer's, can you kind of explain why the wandering often occurs?
Yes. So as the disease progresses, people lose their ability to recognize familiar places, faces, even their own home. And so oftentimes, people are so frightened and scared out of their confusion will wander away in search of home, in search of something familiar that brings them security.
So even though they're in their own home, a place that say they've lived for 10, 15 years or what have you, and they're extremely familiar with it, on a normal day with the Alzheimer's disease, the progression, literally what they've looked at for 15 or 20 years suddenly does not look familiar at all.
Yes, absolutely. And they are so scared and frightened. And, oftentimes, home is really not even a physical place, but it's that feeling inside, where you feel secure and safe. And that's really what they're looking for.
And too many times, whenever there are wandering cases, there's an unfortunate end because of the confusion, because of their wandering at night, because of obviously the temperatures of the day, the weather situation, whatever happens to be the case. So too often we see death as the end result of wandering. What can family members do? What should they be aware of? Perhaps maybe even some things that they can change to better protect their family member.
Right. I mean, one of the first things is to know the signs of, what could lead to a wandering incident. So if, folks are returning, later than usual from a walk or a drive or coming home late from church or a doctor's appointment, that's indicating that they likely got lost on the way home. If they're forgetting how to, get to familiar places, forgetting that where they live is home, or if they start talking about trying to fulfill past obligations, like I've got to get to school, even getting lost within their own home, like not being able to find the bathroom, the bedroom, those are all warning signs that somebody could be at risk.
And obviously, we deal with family members on a regular basis. And, some days you just have a fog that you don't remember, where did I set something down, where I either set something down or I needed to call this person. Some of those are just, even when you're 30 years old, 40 years old, just life in general, let's say we're under a lot of stress or something. But there are some early indicators which could cause family members to maybe reach out to a doctor or somebody in the know and say, can we take a closer look at this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, what we call the 10 warning signs, so if just like you're talking about, if you notice that someone is forgetting things, which we all do, but it's losing the ability to retrace your steps. So, you can't find the car keys or your purse because you don't have the memory there to think back on to find that item. Or if you notice that someone is having difficulty completing familiar tasks, things they've always done for years, and even not being able to, operate the remote for the television.
There are protective steps I know that are on your website that
Yes.
mention things like, changing the location of locks or adding in a different lock, and that accessibility to the outside, change that up enough to where you can hopefully stop a family member from wandering out.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, putting, the slide locks up high on the door that you can lock, getting, child-proof knobs to put on the handles of your exit doors, because it makes it much harder to turn the knob, putting alarms on your door that alerts you if the individual, leaves the home or tries to go outside of the home. Other things that we talk about is, keeping the person busy. If you know that there's a certain time of day when they really get restless and they start talking about wanting to go home or asking where is mom or dad, that's a time that you want to have some meaningful activities planned to help get them through that time of confusion and anxiety for them.
And just finally here, what would you tell folks, website information, where can they seek out more information if they're just kind of in their early stages of this and their family members just starting to show some possible signs? Where would you like to direct them to go to get the latest information?
Right. Our website is alz.org/Cincinnati. And then I would also like for folks to know that we have clinical staff, social workers, and nurses that provide free family care consultations. So we will meet with you and help you create a plan of care for your loved one. And one of those things is going to include, how can I keep them safe and what do I need to look for? So I would encourage folks to, call us at 1-800-272-3900.
All right, Melissa, I appreciate your time tonight, and hopefully we can just continue to share this information, share the word, and help folks out there dealing with this. It's a tragic ending to this most recent story for sure, and our hearts go out to the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back. I'm Evan Millward. They're calling it a stage for all reasons. We're talking about the Imperial Theater in Mohawk. I wonder if you've seen it, if you've driven by. Well, saving the theater has been a passion project for a small group of people for many years now. And now they're launching the next phase of rehabilitating the building, and they hope with it an engine for improving that neighborhood. I recently spoke with the owner, Julie Fay, and project director, Marilyn Hyland. I want to start, Julie, with you, and you saw this opportunity several years ago. Obviously, this has been a long time coming, but what about the Imperial made you say, we've got to save this building and this theater?
Well, the Imperial Theater is such an iconic building. It's from also one of my favorite architectural ages, the 1930s, the current front. The high visibility from the west side coming down Central Parkway, coming over Lynn Street from the west end. It's just positioned to command that space and it needs to be there. You try to imagine that corner without it there, and it's impossible to do so. So I'm also an advocate for small developers. So I think we need more of them, more individual ownership of buildings, build your own safety net with rental units within. And this was a wonderful building that could maybe jumpstart that area.
I was just going to say, you are a little bit of an island out there. There are a couple of there. I think there's a market and maybe a barber shop over there, but there's not a lot. So you see that as an opportunity, and maybe does it present a challenge too?
It does. So many of the buildings are empty, but that is that opportunity, and we just need to ratchet it up a notch. This theater could be that transformative project, that catalyst to bring that neighborhood back. It is neglected, as you notice now, but the Reverend owned the building and had stopped having services in it because the roof leaked so badly. And I just didn't want to see another building go down because of water. Water is not the friend of buildings.
No, I want to bring Marta in a little bit too, because you have these beautiful renderings and you can really dream of what this space is. How do you make it ensure that it is a feasible theater and event space? I know you've done a lot of research on this.
Yeah, we're working on it. I think first we really started looking at this project as not only a theater and performing arts space, but really and truly a community and economic development project. So really focusing on talking to established artist communities here in the Cincinnati area, as well as up and coming groups that are here, and community groups who are interested in using the space, and really taking the time to get to know them, what their needs are, what the accessibility issues are, what the, making sure that we're inviting the neighborhood in, as well as the artistic community in. So it really feels like there's ownership, not just by Julie and by the management team and the project team, but by the entire community.
So you're kind of at this point where you've got the vision, you've got sort of the vision to show people. What do you need now? How do you get it across the finish line?
Good question. The age-old question. Money is the big push now, right? So now that we have interested parties, we're starting to talk to the banks. We're looking at a project cost of about $9.5 million. We've had about $500,000 that's been privately financed so far. We have achieved the Part 2 National Park Service, and we are getting federal historic tax credits. We've applied for Ohio tax credits. We're obviously all the stimulus fund money that's coming into the city. We talked to the city about that, and really we're going to start looking for private financing as well. So if you know anybody who wants to invest in a new state-of-the-art theater in Cincinnati, we're ready to go. We're really ready to jump in. And then once we get the financing, it's an 18-month build out, and hopefully we'll be ready to open the curtains.
All right, we're almost out of time. Julie, any kind of parting thoughts on this? It's got to feel good to see this vision really one step closer to reality.
It is. And like Marta said, it's the financing stage we're at now. And we feel that, and others have asked us, what is the city doing for you? So we feel that this is that transformative project that they're looking for, that would really benefit from the stimulus package that we're getting. It's an opportunity that the timing is right.
All right, Julie Fay, Marta Hyland, the Imperial Theater. I can't wait to watch what happens. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We always like to know what you think about the stories you see on WCPO 9 News. Be sure to pick up that phone and call the Feedback Friday hotline with your own personal opinions at 513-852-4998. I'll share what your thoughts are and your comments every Friday night at 6 o'clock on WCPO 9 News. And that is This Week in Cincinnati for this Sunday. Be sure to join us for breaking news, weather, and sports at 6 and 11 tonight on WCPO 9. Plus, we're always updating your headlines on WCPO.com.